Breaking news right now, Hunter Biden is in more trouble. It turns out that the IRS investigators, those guys that were after him way back in the beginning, and by the way, they weren't political. I mean, the one I'm going to show you here, he was married to a Democrat, is still married to a Democrat, was saying, look, I'm putting everything on my line by coming out here and saying something, but he was investigating the improprieties that Hunter Biden had in his taxes. He hadn't paid like millions of dollars worth of back taxes. And so as they were looking at that, they found a whole bunch of other stuff, and he started sounding the alarm, but he kept getting shut down at every single corner. Remember that? Here he is.
Today, I sit here before you, not as a hero or a victim, but as a whistleblower compelled to disclose the truth. That said, in coming forward, I believe I'm risking my career, my reputation, and my casework outside of the investigation we are here to discuss. I ultimately made the decision to come forward after what I believe were multiple attempts at blowing the whistle in the Internal Revenue Service, at the Internal Revenue Service. No one should be above the law, regardless of your political affiliation.
Right. That's absolutely 1,000% true. And yet it seemed Hunter Biden was way above the law. I know this because I personally ran into this sharing a story on social media. Got blocked for a year. Not here, which we love our friends over here at YouTube, and they've actually been terrific. And it's another reminder to subscribe, share, like, all that good stuff. But I'm telling you guys, it was a really tricky world out there for a while. And this was after Biden had become president. But Hunter was like no-go territory. You could not talk about this stuff. And it's like, wait a second. You actually tried to tell us, and then you were keeping up this sham that somehow, even though his laptop was being investigated by the FBI, we weren't allowed to say that this was nothing but misinformation fed to us courtesy of Rudy Giuliani and the Russians. And, when this whistleblower came forward and said some things didn't add up, he's the one suddenly in trouble? Well, you know what's happening today? They're giving him a promotion. We just got a big promotion. Here is Scott Bessent, his new boss at Treasury. And let me just say, this does not bode well for Hunter, because you see the Treasury Department had sent out a bunch of notices to a bunch of banks questioning some of Hunter's transactions, some of his foreign transactions, and that was a big deal at the time. And so there's more information that can be discovered over at Treasury that these guys are hopefully going to get to the bottom of. They were just hired by one Mr. Scott Bessent. Listen to him with my friend Maria here this morning.
The culture of being able to come forward when you see wrongdoing is a central part of our democracy. I saw these two fellows before the president's address to Congress in Speaker Johnson's office. They came over to me and said, sir, we're still being harassed. And I had been in touch with Senator Grassley about what was happening to them, but seeing them in person really brought it home for me. So I went and decided I would bring them into Treasury, give them a year to investigate the wrongdoing that's going on at the IRS, and then they will go back in. Mr. Shapley will serve as the senior deputy for investigations and enforcement. So we'll have them in Treasury. We'll learn what's been going on at the IRS, what's been wrong, how could this Hunter Biden nonsense have happened, and we're going to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone again, whether they're Republicans, Democrats, or independents.
Yeah. Okay, so what he's getting at there is some of the bank notices that went out, right? So Treasury knew about this. So who were their contacts over at the IRS? And now Treasury's going to investigate the IRS, and I imagine those guys are going to look back over what was going on with Treasury, because they had to issue these notices telling these banks that, particular accounts looked kind of suspicious because he's getting money from here, there, and everywhere. I literally mean it. Romania, he's getting money from Ukraine, money from China, and all, oddly enough, old-fashioned energy companies. So it's like, okay, you can't do any old-fashioned energy drilling or anything like that here in the good old US of A, but you go to China, you go to Romania, you go to Ukraine, and guess who's your buddy that's going to help you work it all out? One Hunter Biden, but never registered as a foreign lobbyist? Does that not strike people as just a little bit odd? Well, it struck the whistleblowers as odd. that were trying to investigate at the time, and it was amazing how that thing just got shut down. I mean, I know it again because I'm a member of the media and I saw it getting shut down. But the fact that it was shut down by our so-called deep state is so wrong. But guess what, guys? You know, he was pardoned, but that pardon itself may mean nothing.
We have thousands of murderers that Biden and his incompetency, first of all, he's grossly incompetent, but that Biden and his people and his probably autopen, which it looked like we had an autopen for a president, and we would have been better off if we had probably. But it looks to me like, you know, that's a big subject. I'm sure you won't ask about that, but the whole subject of autopen, did he know what he was doing? Did he authorize it? Or is this somebody in an office, maybe a radical left lunatic, just signing whatever that person wants? That's not what it's all about. I never use it. I mean, we may use it as an example to send some young person a letter, because it's nice, you know, we get thousands and thousands of letters and letters of support for young people, for people that aren't feeling well, etc. But to sign pardons and all of the things that he signed with an autopen is disgraceful.
Yeah. And as he pointed out, at 12:35, I guess it would be in the morning, yesterday morning, he said the pardons that Sleepy Joe gave to the Unselect Committee of Political Thugs and many others are hereby declared void, vacant, and of no further force or effect because of the fact that they were done by autopen. In other words, Joe Biden did not sign them. More importantly, he didn't know anything about them. So this is actually kind of a big deal, guys. And I explained some of this yesterday. You can certainly go back and watch yesterday's show. I encourage you to do that. But we got into this because this auto signature thing, this is kind of a mess. This is a really, really big deal. And it's been controversial for years. It came out during the George Bush era. He never used it because he found it so controversial. In fact, he would like deliberately fly home if there was anything really big that he had to sign. And it wasn't until Obama, because Obama had to go on his vacations, that he wound up using this autopen signature. And then, of course, Joe Biden had to use it a lot, because I'm not sure how much work Joe Biden was really doing. I mean, that's our question. That's Trump's question, too. Take a look at that nice little post he put out where it was himself as president, and then for 4 years, the autopen as president, and then, well, you know, himself back with the jail photo from Fulton County, Georgia. Anyway, unbelievable stuff. But think about what Hunter Biden is up against right now. Again, there were a whole bunch of what they call suspicious activity reports about Hunter Biden. There were like 70 of them that the Treasury Department sent out to Hunter's banks. And the question is, like, how is it that it was never ever followed up on? What was the disconnect between the IRS and the Treasury Department? James Comer has talked about this. I have a clip of him. This might have been from a couple of years ago on Ted Cruz's program, and he's explaining how serious a deal this is. And I just think it's going to come back to bite Hunter in the you-know-what.
Over the course of 10 years.
And how many were issued concerning Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and the Biden family?
Over 170. They were direct.
Wait, you were at a bank and they issued 2 in 10
how many years?
If you had 2 SARs, they're called SARs in the banking industry. If you had 2 SARs against you, it would be hard for you to open an account somewhere. There wouldn't be any bank that would want to have you as a customer because it's not worth the paperwork. Remember, when the bank files one of these, you could understand this, appreciate this, Senator. That's inviting the regulators to come in and regulate. Okay, that's the last thing the banks want.
170 get filed. That means that somebody's getting a deposit in their account. It's a big amount. It's from somewhere suspicious. I mean, what triggers it? Why? You're a banker. What is it that makes you say we got to file a SAR?
A large transaction that comes out of the blue.
So and what's large? What is there a threshold?
You had $1 million. I'll use the Robinson Walker account because we subpoenaed. That was the first bank account we subpoenaed.
Now, who's Robinson Walker?
Rob Walker was one of the associates that they used to funnel money from China and Romania and then down and launder it down to the Biden.
So he's a.
Today, I sit here before you not as a hero or a
over the course of 10 years.
So think that through. You just saw Comer explain that there were 70 suspicious activity reports. They had all this money that they were potentially laundering. And somehow nobody was doing anything about it at IRS. The IRS whistleblower, he's now been brought over to Treasury. And so, as you heard from the Treasury Secretary himself, they're not going to let this go. So Hunter Biden, he's in a lot of trouble. Now, okay, the pardon thing. Again, I'm just going to say that there's been a ton of controversy about it. I don't think that he's going to be able to hide behind that. I don't think Liz Cheney's going to be able to. I don't think Fauci's going to be able to. I don't think Adam Kinzinger or Adam Schiff are going to be able to hide behind this thing, only because you have to ask yourself, if, for example, Joe Biden was not in a good enough state of mind to actually sit in a court of law and defend himself against all those documents that he took. He admitted that he took them, right? He had all those documents, in my car, next to my Corvette, in my garage. If he wasn't in well enough mind to actually sit and defend himself in that event, then how was he running the country? And how could he possibly have pardoned all of these people, right? Like, that does not make any sense. Gary Hammers, thank you so much. Love from the UK. Love back to you guys. Thank you for the compliments on the work, and thank you for your generosity. Anyway, I do think that they've got themselves in a pickle. The Hunter Biden family, the entire family. This came up in the briefing, and I just want to show you Caroline Levitt. She's pretty darn good. This is no KJP, shall we say, Karine Jean-Pierre. This girl has got it going on, and she knows how to deflect when asked silly questions by one reporter, a CNN reporter, Caitlin Collins. Do you know her? Anyway, take a look at this clip.
Or talking about issuing preemptive pardons to these people.
But was he aware of his signature being used on every single pardon? That's a question you should ask the Biden White House.
Is there any evidence on that he wasn't aware of it?
You're a reporter. You should find out.
Okay,
Sean.
so I have a question on the
You're a reporter. You should find out. Absolutely, you should find out. Instead, I guess these guys, they were doing whatever USAID told them to. Remember how I showed you all the money that Politico was getting before they say, oh, that was going to subscriptions, Politico subscriptions for $8.2 million in an election year. Let me tell you, nobody's paying $10,000 a year for a subscription unless you're on Wall Street. And maybe you pay a little more than that for your Bloomberg terminal and some good hedge fund research. Oh, that's a nifty time for me to just mention 76 Research. I wasn't going to do it just yet, but I might as well, because this subscription will not cost you $10,000 a year. That's how crazy it is, right? Guys, remember that. Think about what they were doing. So it wasn't just that. You had the New York Times getting like nearly $30 million a year. And it's like, oh, is that why we're doing such positive coverage on one Anthony Fauci now? And that's why we were willing to be deceived? Anyway, 76research.com, use code word dollar. That's my company. I created it alongside a longtime friend who's brilliant and has been investing for many, many years, including running billions of dollars on Wall Street for many, many years. So I do encourage you to take a look at that. We just actually published a new idea yesterday for all of you. So 76research.com, use code word dollar. But when you think of what Hunter is now up against, it's going to be pretty significant. And I think in terms of those auto signatures, as much as Caroline Levitt wants to, as CNN wants to somehow say, well, was this really, he knew what he was doing, so maybe it was fine. I think Caroline kind of put her in her place pretty darn well. Meanwhile, what's it going to mean in terms, what is it going to mean in terms of his Ukraine business dealings? That's a big one still, if you would. And it's a big one from my estimation, only because Ukraine hired him to the tune of $63,000 or so a month so that he could provide a kind of protection. I've seen New York Times articles actually, and LA Times articles saying, well, this is what's done. Foreign countries, they often hire members of the administration's family in order to get some protection. Of course, the administration's family would need to, one, register as a foreign lobbyist, and two, these things would need to be disclosed. In the Obama White House, he actually specifically said, because he wanted to guard against this with one Joe Biden, specifically Joe Biden, I don't think he appreciated Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton's CGI, which was raking in billions. I mean, that's a whole other story. And we're going to go there. You know it, because it's all coming out. Anyway, Hunter was running like a little teeny little CGI operation, getting paid up the wazoo by various countries, including Ukraine, for what? Daddy's protection? Dad was in charge of Ukraine policy. Here is Daddy, back when he was a little more coherent. You may have to turn up the volume on this, I'm not sure. But he's speaking with Richard Haas at the CFR, Council on Foreign Relations, of which I used to be a member. And they're talking about how Biden was able to change everything in Ukraine, including getting rid of a prosecutor they believe to be corrupt. Interestingly enough, the prosecutor that Biden's talking about getting fired happened to be the prosecutor that Burisma, the company Junior was working for, wanted fired because he was conducting an investigation, rightly so, into the now defunct energy company. Let's watch Biden effectively kind of admitting his guilt. You know, there is this little thing called tape.
Or loan guarantees. And I went over, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out of the press conference. I said, no, I'm not going to, or we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority, you're not the president. The president said, I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion, I'm going to be leaving here. I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid at the time. Well, so they made some genuine, substantial changes institutionally and...
What do you think? Hey, reminder to subscribe, share, like, all that good stuff. Hit the bell so you know when I'm here. But, I mean, I think there's a lot of there that still has not been, in my estimation, sufficiently addressed, including the 70s SARS reports, suspicious activity reports that Treasury had. And somehow, you know, the IRS investigators, they were not allowed to follow up on things because everything was getting shut down. Why was it getting shut down? Because somebody had access to power. That would be Junior, who had access to Daddy. And then, you know, what do you think those auto signatures were? Again, it's people in power getting what they need and want. And they may not have even been getting it from Joe himself. It may have just been, you know, on speed dial there, whoever's emailing into whoever was running the country for 4 years.
So follow up on autopen. Are those executive orders, those pardons from the president now null and void?
Well, I think so. It's not my decision. That'll be up to a court. But I would say that they're null and void because I'm sure Biden didn't have any idea that it was taking place. And somebody was using an autopen to sign off and to give pardons to, as an example, just one example, but the J6 Unselect Committee. They gave pardons with an autopen. I don't think Biden knew anything about it. And what they did is they deleted and destroyed all of the information that took them over a year to get. And the reason they did that is because the information was very incriminating about them. Like Nancy Pelosi was determined conclusively that she knew about 10,000 soldiers and it turned it down. And if we used 500 soldiers, you would have had no problem.
Okay. So his point being that, and I know that's hard to hear a little bit, his point being that there was a lot of corruption going on. And I think we know that. I mean, we've learned of so much. And so when he says those pardons are null and void, I mean, I think, you know, legally, he's going to have something to stand on there. Because if you look at the way the Constitution is written, pardons specifically, but any bill that a president signs, it talks about how it has to be presented in person to the president. There's a whole sort of rigmarole about it if you go back to the Founding Fathers days. And granted, I know technology changes things, but if you're kind of a purist in how you interpret the Constitution, you would expect then that somebody would have to actually do these things in person, right?